but I've got teammates that are also on, so they'll flag stuff for me as we go as well. But yeah, we'll definitely have some Q&A at the end, and I will do my best to dig back through the chat and see what you guys have asked. So that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Jennifer Goetz. Like I say here, I'm a nerd, I'm an advocate, I'm very tall, and shockingly, you will not believe it, but I'm actually an introvert. So this will be one of those days that I go home and I don't talk for like 3 hours after this. So, all right. So let's dive into layered thinking beyond the brand and what does that mean? We often, whether it's in my day job life or my freelance life, we will get somebody that's like, I made a logo, I'm ready to go. Or I've got my website ready, I'm ready to go. I started a Facebook page. Awesome, very proud of you. I'm glad you did those things. But those are not quite enough. Those are individual items that are awesome. They're going to be part of your brand. But they need to be part of a larger umbrella, of a larger look. So that's where layered thinking comes in. I've even got a cake analogy on the next slide. Layered thinking is sitting there and going, okay, I've done this, what's next? Okay, I've done this, what's next? How are you always building on something? How is it always moving around in a cycle? How is it working? Not working. So it's always kind of going through, okay, well, I've made my logo. Where should it go? Maybe I've put it on shirt. I put it on swag. That's awesome. Well, where are you wearing those shirts? You know, that sort of thing. So it's always the layer. It's always what can you be building on next? So it's, like I said, it's a system. It's a lot of different things always working on top of each other. And you'll catch even with us, guys, we'll try something. Sometimes it doesn't work. But we will always take the data from something that we tried and we'll kind of go, okay, so if it didn't work, how can I do it again next time and have it be better and have it function in a way that's way more sustainable and way more useful for me? So when I talk about that all being a dynamic system, we're talking about visibility, consistency, and strategy. So visibility, exactly what it says. It is your brand needing to be everywhere. So where can people see it? Consistency, everything needs to align with your core messages. What are you about? What is it you're selling? Who should be, who do you want to be purchasing it, buying in on your concept, picking up 1,000 of your widgets. So it's making sure that you are not only visible, but you're consistently visible. Are you always where they expect you to be? And if you're someplace unexpected, what's the strategy behind that? What was the thought behind that? What are you going to get out of that? So that's when you go to having that conversation of the strategy being all about timing and effort delegation. And we'll go into that a little bit more here in just a minute. Like I said, and this is ruthless on my part, I'm so sorry, I didn't even think about it to put, it's lunchtime for goodness sakes, and here we have a cake. But hang in there with me, we'll make it through. So real branding, a lot of times people say brand and they're thinking logo, but brand is the whole darn thing. So it's really about that repetition and the placement and the purpose. Again, all those layers stacking up on top of each other to make your brand really function and really run. So like I said, a lot of people will think that they've made their logo, well, that's my brand, or I've made my Facebook page and that's my brand. Not quite. It is part of your layer cake here. Your logo is kind of like your flour, but you've got other ingredients. You've got your website, you've got your social media, you've got your calls to action. If you're not familiar with what a call to action is, that's what do you want them to do? Do you want them to go to your website and buy something? Do you want them to come to an event and participate? Are you fundraising and you want them to spend, give money to you or the cause that you believe in? So always be thinking about, yes, you might put the logo out there and you might make a nice Facebook post about your logo, but did you give them something to do? You always want to be giving people something to do. Within that, let's talk about those branding layers. So, brand presence, where you exist, uh, the experience, how do people interact with you? And then that last one, amplification, how do you get noticed? So, go ahead and we'll start with this first one, brand presence, where you exist. So, and I've got a few notes for myself over here to the side. So, sorry, I keep kind of peeking away. But your logo needs to live everywhere so that everybody always knows it's you. Um, you can go to the classics, Nike, McDonald's, Coca-Cola. You know how they behave every time you show up at the store or when you go in to buy. But within that, does your website align with your logo look? Are your calls to action legible, easy, simple? One of the things that we run into with folks sometimes is they're very excited about the thing that they've created and that they've made, but they know it so inside and out, but they've forgotten how the user might be looking at what it is that they're doing. So always have that top of mind as well, because that really moves us into that second layer, which is how are people interacting with you? Is your social content pushing people to the right place? Are your emails clean? Do they align with that brand aesthetic too? And how does your customer, I know it's a lot of people talk about the customer journey, but it really is, how are they finding you? And then once they find you, how do they interact with you? And then how do you continue forward with them so that you keep them as a customer? And then last one is the amplification. How do you get noticed? So are you maybe somebody that's been doing a lot more traditional print media? Do you need to also be doing things in a digital realm? Are you more somebody that's going to have to really pay for more of your reach, or is what you're doing really organic? And then, other things to consider, community engagement. How do partnerships reinforce your brand? Who are you working with? And does that align with you? Does that enhance you? And do you likewise enhance them? So, the big question, timing and prioritization. This is a lesson I've had to learn still, probably daily, that I can't do it all. I can't say yes to everything. It can't always happen just through me. So this is one of those times where you have to start talking about, okay, so who can help you? Um, and we'll get to that a little bit more here in just a second. Um, so when we talk about that brand growth pyramid and the things that you need to have in place, um, we're going to talk about foundation, engagement, and amplification a little bit more. So your foundation, that is that logo, that messaging, and that website consistency. Your social presence is all part of your engagement, your audience interaction. And then amplification is ads, partnerships, and brand ambassadors. So those are all of those things that need to be working together as you are working through what it is that your brand and overall messaging is going to need to be. So when we talked about that delegation conversation a little bit earlier, and you can't do it all, this is where we're going to talk about the last slide, now marrying up with this slide. So a couple of time management tips for you as you're trying to work through all of those things that might be associated with your brand and your branding. So batch content creation to stay consistent. This is where Canva really is your friend. I was definitely somebody that when Canva first came out, I wanted to have lots of feelings about it. And now I'm like, okay, this makes life a lot easier because I can have a client who doesn't need to understand everything about how I've built it all day long, but they can see it and we can collaborate and they know that it looks like them, it feels like them. And so that has made conversations a lot more fluid and a lot faster. So there's that component to it. But then you can take all of those things that you've built with your client, plan your month, plan your quarter, in some cases, plan your year. We've had clients that we worked with that we've sat down and done audio recordings, and then we've taken the transcript from that recording, turned it into a year and a half worth of blogs. And so Then you can break that down and turn that into social media posts. Get it all plugged in. However, it is that you like to schedule those things. We use Cloud Campaign, but there's lots of different ways that you can manage something like that. But get that stuff going in advance so that you're not as mired down in, oh gosh, did we post anything today? And then, gosh, well, did it even sound like us? Yeah, it did, because you did it in advance, which is awesome. It just frees up your hands and your brain to go find, do, be other stuff. So, and then the other thing that I would say, again, this is something that I have to work on, delegation. Like I said, I'm somebody that's like, I'll just do it. I'll just do it. It'll be easier for me to just do it. Not always. One, I need my time freed up to do other things. And two, there's an importance in that team trust that, once you bring other people in and around with you, they're going to have other ideas. They're going to have other plans of attack. They're going to have other approaches. They're going to make you better, and they're going to make your brand better in the long run. So that's something that I would always urge you to do is if you can delegate, delegate. The biggest thing that I would tell you though, out of this particular slide, I once had a client that I said, almost verbatim, I said, plan for what you can plan for so that when it goes off the rails, you're ready. Um, and he said, what do you mean when? You were very specific to say when. And I said, yeah. I said, when it goes off the rails. Stuff's going to happen. Your day's going to get busy. Life's going to occur. Markets are going to shift. If you've got planned content in the hopper, you've got stuff ready to go so that your hands are free to deal with other things. Um, so I always like to throw in little nuggets like this of like, well, that's great, Jen, but I don't know where to start. You know what? Great news. Sometimes we don't either. And I don't say that to be disparaging in either way, in any way. It's just that when you're presented with a new problem, you got to sit there and go, well, gosh, what are we going to do about this? And when it comes to somebody like Compass, we've done 10,000 hours of work kind of thing, whether as individuals or as a group. And we're very comfortable with diving into a problem like that and working it. You'll even see me use a yarn ball icon here pretty soon. So, you know, that but it is important in situations where you're sitting there going, I don't know where to start. Well, let's talk about some tips about what you can do here in a little bit when you are struggling to get started. You've been presented with a huge problem. But let's talk about those roadblocks first. Several years ago had the opportunity to work with about eight individuals that were running different campaigns at a different time. And the idea of posting to social media under their brand, under their name, was so overwhelming. They would really struggle with some vapor lock about, well, what happens if I say the wrong thing? As marketers, we are wonderful, most of the time, very animated people that get excited about solving a problem like that and communicating it out to the world. And if it doesn't quite stick the landing, we'll just rework it. We can also overwhelm people very easily with, it's fine, we'll figure it out. So, it was sitting and working with these people that were, very analytical, very logical, very pragmatic, and acknowledging that they were overwhelmed by something that I'm exceedingly comfortable with. So it's recognizing things like, are you feeling overwhelmed? Is what you're doing not strategic to the rest of your work? Maybe it doesn't look right. Maybe it's got too many fonts. Maybe you can't figure out why it doesn't fit. And how do you go back to something like that and start yourself over, try it again? That can be a lot. Inconsistent follow through. Maybe one week, this is where that batch scheduling is going to come back and be your very best friend. Maybe one week you had all the time in the world and you got all your posts out and you got a newsletter out and you're crushing it. But then the next week you don't do anything. And now you started to create issues with the algorithms and the mathematical follow through, that a page that was starting to climb just kind of, you know what I mean? So it's making sure that you're doing something at all times, that you've got a little drip going, just like you would if it gets too cold out, kind of thing. You always let your faucet drip during the winter time. Marketing is really similar in some ways like that. Misunderstanding the role of each layer. Um, Thinking that a presence automatically creates engagement or leads. You know, again, just because you're on Instagram, if you're not using it to its fullest potential, you're not necessarily going to get engagement. You're not necessarily going to get leads, especially if that message isn't clean or giving them, like I said, something to do. Um, so another thing that we catch being a roadblock is understanding the value of analog tools like print materials, face-to-face conversations, and partnerships. Um, Man, sometimes I've had to have some really tough face-to-face conversations with people, but because we had the breakthrough. We pushed through the roadblock. Um, and then last but not least, time mismanagement, working on things that don't move the needle. You know, we even talk regularly as a team, is what you're doing helping, or is what you're doing just busy? And what is real within that? How do we get back to the real thing so that we're making sure that we're pushing, you know, the best information that we possibly can to our clients? So you might be feeling a little called out if some of those roadblocks sounded all like you. Um, we've got our namaste moment. Everybody take a breath. It's okay. There are times that we get caught in those as marketers, and that's all right. We've just, like I said, we've spent the time and the hours to push through something like that, to figure out just exactly where can we start? What could we do next? So let's talk about, there's that yarn ball, friends. Let's talk about how to get unstuck. Um, it's going to sound pretty simple, but start small. I'm not going to lie, there's days that I sit down at my laptop and I can look at the list I've made myself. I can look at the list we've got in Teams. I can look at the emails, and go, okay, I'm going to take care of so and so today. This is going to be great. And 3 hours later, that hasn't happened. I rabbit holed down something else. I got a phone call that threw me off. Name your thing. Um, and so a lot of times what I will do to start my day is I'll start small. I'll go, what are 2 or 3 5-minute tasks I can knock out, that will just get my brain to go, okay, we've done something. And then I can dive in on that project. I can dive in on that client, and I can really more effectively personally help manage and work for them on whatever it is that they need. Next things that you could use if you're trying to get unstuck, an audit tool. This is where you could sit down looking at all of your brand components, that logo, that website, that social media. Give yourself a 15-minute check-in. You can use, you know, there are online tools that you could use for something like that. But really analog, sit down and do it yourself. Take a look at those components about your brand real quick. Is the logo there? Is the website there? Did you make it easy? You know, that kind of stuff. And give yourself your own little brand audit right there. Like I said, batch scheduling, we do it all the time. We will sit down at the last week of a month, and then, you know, we're wrapping up May, which is horrifying in its own right now. But you know, we'll sit down in the next handful of days and we'll go, okay, so what does June look like for us? What does June look like for our clients? What does June look like, you know, nationally? What holidays are in there? That kind of stuff. And we just start to plan and schedule for things that way. Um, this one's a little bit like the top, but just a little touch when you want to set some micro goals. You know, I talked about it a little bit earlier. There is the algorithm associated with social media. And you could set a micro goal for yourself of, okay, I'm going to post 2 times a week. I gotta, you know, I want to make sure that I'm staying on that radar. I want to make sure that the things that I'm posting on my social media are, they match what's on my website so that, as Google's taking a look at my whole brand, I'm moving up in the list kind of thing. All of those things are tied together. All of those things are talking to each other. So that's where you can go back and you can set a little goal like that and go, okay, I'm going to do this, and that's going to be that water droplet that affects everything else about my brand in a positive way. A couple of other items to get unstuck. Y'all, extra eyes all day long. I am have not worked with a client yet that I haven't said, I'm an adult. Once it's out of my head, let's talk it through. Because at the end of the day, um, if you're building someone a brand, if you're building someone a messaging strategy, if you're building somebody a fundraising strategy, you're building it. Yes, that's awesome. But in reality, it's theirs kind of thing. So you always want those extra eyes conversations, whether it's with your team or it's with the client, to make sure that everybody knows if this is on brand. Does it match? Does it go with who we are? Does it sound like us? Does it feel like us? This is where you take a lot of left brain, right brain. You take all that logic along with the creativity and the feelings, and you're smushing it together. Some days that's easier said than done, but when you're feeling stuck, get somebody else to look at it for you. We even had a conversation with our own team a few weeks ago. One of my team members brought me a billboard and said, I don't know why I don't like this, but I don't like this. You know what? Sometimes that's the reaction. That's a real and valid and okay reaction. At the end of the day, once we talked it through, I was like, you just have too many words on there. For a billboard, rule of thumb, 7 words or less. We just had too many words. We dialed it back, boom, we're done. Billboard's out the door. Another one that I really, really, really like to use is to work backwards. Let's say that you've got, well, for instance, I've got a client that I've got quite a few things that need to be done by the end of June and a brand built by the end of July. And we're sitting there going, okay, so end of June, that's right here. What do I need to do tracking backwards in order to keep myself ready to go, the client and informed, and so that we know our deadlines, we don't miss anything. If we do miss something, well, we've talked about it. We know how to work it all the way through. Another one that we use like crazy, again, this is going back to that Canva conversation. If you can templatize things, holy buckets, you will save yourself so much sanity. Making sure that, let's say you've got an educational track that lives under your brand right over here. Well, that educational track, yes, it's still going to have your logo on it, but maybe it's got your logo and a supporting color, because you've got this other educational track. It lives under your brand, still looks like you, but it needs to have its own color. The reason we talk so hard about templatizing is I had the very good fortune a number of years ago of getting to meet the individual that is literally, his one and only job is to be in charge of color for Lollapalooza. That's it. That's his job. And I genuinely was like, how does one become the director of color for Lollapalooza? And one of the things that he talked about, and this is why it's so important in that templatization conversation, is he said, if someone has shown up at our website and they are going to spend $25,000 for a VIP tent and they are going to be right next to the stage, they want the full experience. He said, if I start them out on the website in hot pink, and then they get their tickets in the mail and it's hot pink, and they get the wristband in the mail and it's hot pink, and then they arrive in Chicago and maybe they get picked up and the driver's holding a hot pink sign, and he said, and we get them all the way to the event, we get them all the way into the venue, we get them all the way over to VIP, and suddenly they go to walk into their VIP tent and it's green. He said, I have damaged the relationship that person now has with our brand. He said, maybe not irreparably, but I've damaged it. And we've made something confusing, or we've made something jarring, or we've made, really at the end of the day, the user experience inconsistent. So that's where having some templatization is going to be your best friend, and it's going to help you when you're stuck and you're sitting there going, oh, how am I going to get these 2 posts done this week? Well, shoot, you've got a spreadsheet that's got, topics of conversation, and you've got your template right over here. We'll put them together. Um, and then last but not least is channel assessment or channel optimization. This is a really big one that is kind of surprising for some folks in the way that you need to be able to give yourself permission to not have to be everywhere. What do I mean by that? So, in a previous existence for myself, I was working with an individual that was running a campaign. And we were trying to figure out every place, obviously that we should have him be so that everybody saw him, everybody liked him. We're just doing our part to push that brand, that story. And he said, should I be on TikTok? All right, let's talk it through. Let's get, just like that first check mark, let's get some extra eyes on it. So we all went down the rabbit hole of should he be on TikTok? And at the end of the day, we chose not to. Um, the reason being was not that we couldn't have made the content, not that we didn't have the time. We would have needed to allocate some resources to it, but whatever, we can figure that part out. The reason we didn't do it was at the end of the day, the subsection of the population that we needed to be interested in him, not a consistent voter. And we needed to be talking to those consistent voters that showed up all the time and really get them engaged. It's not that we didn't care. We just needed to be honest with ourselves about what did we need out of this scenario? What did we need out of this moment? And in that moment, it just wasn't that. But for other people that we work with, it absolutely is. Explainer videos are just killer out there. Demo videos, they're awesome. It's just a matter of, like I said, giving yourself permission that you may not need to be in every space, but analyzing why you don't need to be in every space. You are allowed to go, I don't know that that one's for us. I die, I'm so sorry. But there's been changes over there. Well, maybe it's not for you anymore. Maybe it still is. Have that conversation with your team. So that being said, I'm going to check the chat over here. I'm not seeing anything at the moment, but if anybody's got any questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat, or if any of my team members that are on have any questions, please feel free to send those my way, and I'll hang out here for a hot second while you guys are pondering. So. All right, let me check just to make sure. I think we're good. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I really do appreciate it. More than happy, we will have a recording of this for everybody here pretty soon. And we'll get that shared out to you. But if you guys need anything, always feel free to hit me up with questions. Jennifer at weareyourcompass.com. And here is our lovely team of folks. I know some of them are attending today as well. So please know how much I appreciate you guys, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.